Havoc Demon Hunter currently has a lot of issues, so in today's video, we're going to be going over them. Before we get into it, I do want to say a few things. First off, thank you all so much for all the support and likes on my most recent videos. Likes are the best way to help support me, the most free way. Like the video, then scroll up and watch the video. It's the best way to support any content creator, not just myself, so thank you all for that. Also subscribe, we're pushing for 10K by the end of the year. Now, before we get into this video, this is mostly focused on a PvE standpoint. I might mention PvP here and there, but for the most part, I don't really interact with the PvP side of Havoc Demon Hunter or the game at all. I'm more of a PvE player. So if I mention something and, you know, maybe it's used or is useful in PvP, and I don't know that, again, apologies, but again, more PvE side of things. For things that I know that they're like PvP used or PvP related, I'll mention them. But in general, this will be more PvE focused. So let's get into it. Havoc Demon Hunter, right? Here's our talent tree. Now there's a lot wrong with it. And if you see that my talent tree is a little bit different with all these things here, and you can see I have like spell IDs under things, and I have the slider and I can do this. That's an add-on called Talent Tree Tweaks, I believe it's called. And you check add-ons right here. It is, yeah, Talent Tree Tweaks. So that right there, if you want to pick that up on like CurseForge or something. Anyways, so let's get into it. So we're talking today about the things that are poor or bad with Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, I'm not going to cover things I want to see added to the tree or things I want to see reworked, how I think you should fix it. I'm just going to cover the bad parts. Just going to cover what issues Havoc is currently faced with. I'm not a game dev. You know, I'm not going to go over and saying how things should be fixed. However, I will have a video next week talking about things I want to see that could be cool. But for today, we're just going to go over poor things, poor nodes, bad nodes. So we'll start with the class tree. The class tree is boring, but it's pretty good in general. There's a few nodes that are like unfortunate. You'll never take Swallowed Anger, which is just giving you more fury on a purge, and you'll never take Disrupting Fury, which is more fury on a kick. It's really unfortunate these are no longer baseline. You know, these were a great part of Havoc Demon Hunter or Demon Hunter in general before, giving you fury for wanting to use your utility. Things like Shadow Priest get insanity for using stuff like this, but we don't get fury for using things like this. So it's kind of weird that there's not even like a baseline across different classes or specs where using your utility, if you have it, gives you some kind of resource. Definitely, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It's not make or break, but it is very weird that in general, you know, these are here and not baselined. But whatever. Now, I guess technically you could use them as a cheaper way of getting down here because it's 1 point instead of 2. But you're always going to go off of Rush of Chaos, so who cares? Another point, Aura of Pain. Now, Vengeance uses this because they don't really need Fellblade. But again, it's not very, like, a really interesting node. It just increases your crit chance by 6% of Immo Aura, which is not very useful at all. Now, there's really no builds for Havoc that take this, and again, like, I know Vengeance uses it a bit, but it's still not really useful. I think this node is also weird. Maybe PvP stuff, but I mean, I have no idea why you'd ever take this node. And then this node is another big one. So, this is useful-ish for Vengeance Demon Hunter. Basically, Immolation Aura causes your armor to increase by 10%. It's 20% with both ranks. But as a Havoc Demon Hunter, we don't have that much armor. It's probably one of our weakest things. We have like almost 4,000, and I'm 444 in my dungeon gear because I have lower stuff. But if I equip my single target set, I'm like 446, and you know, my armor doesn't really go up that much. So very low armor, which makes us very squishy against physical damage. This could read like a 5 and 10% physical damage reduction and be much better than armor. But hey, I digress. The biggest thing on this tree, besides all that stuff, is going to be first the Illidari. So Demonic is a lock, and Demonic has other issues which I'll touch on later in the video after we go over all the talents and stuff. First Illidari is meant to be like giving you more, they're both basically giving you more meta uptime. This one gives you short meta every time you I-beam, or Fell Dev, I guess, for Vengeance. And this one just reduces meta to a 2-minute and gives you 10% verse. 10% verse, not that big of a deal. That's 10% damage, 5% damage reduction. That is not that big of a deal for whenever you push meta. Making it a 2-minute cooldown and not giving us Demonic is such a damage loss that there's no way you'll ever take this ability. You'll never even think about pushing this button unless there's some weird tier set in the future that gives us an insane bonus whenever we use the actual Metamorphosis ability. So for all intents and purposes, this ability is dead. You will never take this, ever. There's no reason to. Not even Vengeance will take it. Maybe there's some weird thing in PvP because I-beam whatever is kicked all the time, but even then, using it to enter demonic is still a good use. So this talent is frankly just terrible. It should either be reworked or removed. There's no reason for it to be here. Have it give us something better. You know, like 10% verse is not enough. Finally, I won't touch here because Vengeance can use it, and there's a world in which Elysian Decree gets better that we can come down here, yada yada yada. Relentless Pursuit, again, is just really bad because basically it wants you to use the hunt in such a way where you use it on low health targets where they die before the full duration of the dot goes through. But a lot of the hunt's damage comes from the dot, so I don't see why you'd want this. For it to be like really worthwhile, right, you'd have to have 5 things die with the dot affected by it. And 5 things dying with the dot affected by it is actually a pretty sizable reduction in the cooldown. It's a full minute off of it. But that's so unlikely, and then you're losing so much damage. Yeah, you have it on 30 seconds, but the dot is the big thing, right? This also just adds so much more damage to it. So this doesn't really make sense. I think maybe giving it some kind of AoE portion, because the hunt, let's be real, isn't that strong of a button in AoE, or in single target, to be fair. It's just kind of there, we use it. It's not powerful, but it's solid. It's fine. It's alright. I think maybe giving us the reworked legendary could be fun here, but again, I'll get into that more in a future video. So the class tree overall is fine. You know, some things are meh, like this could be stronger. It was nerfed a lot, we're really squishy. That's definitely one of our big issues. I'll touch on more on the Spec Tree. It's boring. It's a lot less exciting than a lot of other trees. Right, like the Mage Tree got a rework. But it's serviceable. I think that's probably enough for it to be good. Now, touching on the Spec Tree, definitely not the same, and we're going to have some problems there. Alright, so Spec Tree side of things, we can talk about unused talent nodes first, and then get into some more design issues. So, starting from the top, Insatiable Hunger. We're never pushing Demon's Bite this expansion, and this is not enough for us to ever want to do that. Demon's Blades being an auto, consistent Fury generator is so much better than Demon's Bite. The thing with that is that we don't have a lot of GCDs to push Demon's Bite, right? Like, it's not like back in not Castle Nathria. Sanctum Dump, nope, not that one. Sepulture, that's the one. When we were Venthyr bots and all we wanted to do was push Chaos Strike as much as we can. We didn't even push Death Sweep, didn't push anything. We just like I-beam, 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 I-beam to keep our brand up. Yeah, we don't use that, we use this. So we have a lot more GCDs that are important now. So Demon's Blades is really just core to our class. This is not really a choice node. Insatiable Hunger is really bad. So frankly, this node, I guess, could be Demon's Blades, or really just make one of them baseline. I don't know. There's just nothing to really do here, right? Like, Demon's Blades is always going to be the choice. There's never going to be a world where you take Insatiable Hunger unless they really screw things around in a future patch. But yeah, it's just disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, Fell Eruption and this choice node. Now, Fell Eruption, I'm pretty sure, is taken in PvP. It's not taking anything else. It's really hard to take both of these nodes. It's just a pretty big damage loss. You have to drop like Looks Can Kill or Chaotic Transformation. So that sucks. I don't really know how it would make it easier to do. I think honestly dropping some of these 2-point nodes here or here to give us 1 extra point could be a lot better than taking these. Now again, that falls in the issue where they're locked behind other nodes. Improved Chaos Strike basically gates Netherwalk and Desperate Instincts, and Fell Eruption is gated by Fellfire Heart. And you need to take Fellfire Heart, like you take Fellfire Heart in like AoE, but in single target you take Improved Chaos Strike. So if you're an AoE build and you want immunity, then tough luck. I don't know. PvP too. They just don't have the points to path down here and take it, which is disappointing to say the least. Now, Desperate Instincts as a node as well is also just bad. Now, yes, Blur giving us 10% extra damage reduction is really good. However, auto-procking Blur is not good. It'll auto-proc Blur for you in a lot of situations where you don't need to use Blur. Like, let's say you drop below 35% health, but you're otherwise safe, right? Like, your healers are taking care of you and you want to save Blur for another time. It'll just use it. Generally, when you have these defensives, it's not because you're going to get like slowly bled out. Now that can happen, of course. Most of the time, these defensives are most impactful for big one-shots or large hits, right? So you want to use them preactively, or proactively, sorry. And this node is more of a reactive thing. You use it reactively after the damage happens to kind of make sure you don't die to subsequent like smaller hits, but that's not really how defensives are meant to be used. So this node is a little bit questionable. I do wish that second part was gone and Blur just was better as a baseline. It's our only defensive. Squishiness is one of Havoc's biggest issues, which I'll touch on towards the end of the video after these talents, but These are just dead. Also, Netherwalk sucks as an immunity, but hey, it's an immunity, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. This is dead as well. Burning Hatred's dead, but that's not really that big of a deal. It's a choice. You can pick it between Blind Fury and this, so that's not that big. Mortal Dance, fine. We have options to take it sometimes whenever we need, like, Sanguine Healing, or whenever, like, Sark, so that's fine. Improved Fel Rush is just a terrible node, but hey, it's there. Furious Throws, we don't play the Glaive stuff because it's bad now, but it's also there. And the rest of the tree is mostly fine up here. I think before we get down to the bottom gate, the rest of the tree is, like, solid. There's some things that are questionable. I don't think this should be a 2-point row. I think making these 1 point, or maybe just shifting around a bit, because right now we do end up having a lot of points to spend on things, which definitely gates us out of using Fel Eruption or Netherwalk. Maybe dropping these down to 1 point could help that out. But that's there. We use Serrated Glaive now, we use Relentless Onslaught now, we use both these nodes now. So there's situations where you use basically everything in this middle part of the tree, and I think that's pretty good. So I think this is actually like a really good part of the talent tree. And then we get down here. Boo. So the Glaive stuff is dead now. I made a video about it if you want to check that out. It's just weak compared to what we currently have. Enemies necessary, weak compared to what we currently have. It could be reverted to pre-nerf. Momentum, problematic, I'll get there after. But the big issues down here are these two talents. Fel Barrage is never used. So Fel Barrage is an old school talent. It was used a lot back when Havoc first came out. Basically, you use it and you unleash this like Fel energy torrent around you. I'll throw up like clips on screen of me using some of these talents. And it does a lot of damage. But the issue, let's look at it. 63,000 chaos damage, 1 minute cooldown. 36,000 chaos damage, 17-second cooldown. Now, using 17 times 2 is 34. 36 times 2, 72. Oh no, that's more than this. And this is a 1 minute cooldown. So, Glaive Tempest is just better in all scenarios. Now, the other issue with Fel Barrage is that you want to use it with increased periods of haste, which means you want to use it after Furious Gaze and in meta. Now, the issue with that is that we sync our Furious Gaze casts to Essence Break. So you have to come into this weird world where you take like Cycle of Hatred so that you can link up an I-Beam with Fel Barrage. But the issue with that as well is that Fel Barrage doesn't synergize with increasing our I-Beam, our meta duration. So you're losing out on basically all your demonic, right? It's over 3 seconds. So you're losing out on half your demonic window just with Fel Barrage, which means you won't get double death sweep for first blood. You won't get a lot of annihilation damage. So it just doesn't have any synergy with the rest of our tree. Now, it could be saved if it's buffed up or synergized with the rest of the tree, whatever, but it's just an underpicked, never used talent. The same is true for Unleashing Decree. This talent's just bad. It was never used by Havocs in the first place. It was only used by Vengeance whenever it had a lot of those like hooks that tied into it. In terms of like the Legendary and the Soulbind Mechanicos, giving you like CDR on it, as well as that dot. And then on top of that, you had like the Sigil, not the Sigil, the Soul, the Conduit that would double Elysian Decree's effectiveness and give you like 2 of them. So those things made it powerful for Vengeance. It was never powerful for us. The only time you'd ever really want to use this is with Any Means Necessary, but then you have like more short cooldowns that don't really help, and you also want to pick up Quicken Sigil so you have it more often. Then you also drop Fodder to the Flame, and Fodder, upon reading it, doesn't seem crazy. It just does some damage, it heals you. The healing is really powerful, and Havoc actually kind of needs it to survive. But it also gives you a Demon Soul, and Demon Souls just give you 20% extra damage for like 15 seconds. So Fodder to the Flame is actually really, really powerful. It doesn't look like it upon reading. I do think they should add a little thing that the Demon Soul gives you the damage, but you know, you just kind of have to know the class for that. So this is just always better than Elysian Decree. I get it, they're both Shadowlands things, so we want to have them on one node, but there's just never really a use case for Elysian Decree. It's just not good enough. Maybe they could up its AoE damage and it might be a bit better, but again, it's just not really being used in this iteration, and it probably never will be. That's it for like talents that aren't taken. Honestly, the rest of the talents are taken now, which is pretty good. There's lots of different builds that take a lot of these talents. But I do think those builds themselves are problematic. So we're going to swap gears now, and we'll talk less about the never picked talents, more about the design issues Havoc has as a whole. Alright, so now that we've gotten kind of like the poor, bad talents out of the way, let's jump over into more of the design issues around Havoc. I think there's 3 big ones. There's Demonic, which is a big issue. There's like Momentum, and then there's Isolated Prey and Fodder to the Flame issues, which, to be fair, can be slumped in with Momentum, but we're going to treat them separately. So Demonic, right now, is one of the most powerful things for Havoc Demon Hunter. Basically, I-Beam causes you to enter a demon form for 6 seconds after it finishes dealing damage. Demon form is powerful. It's basically your metamorphosis, right? So whenever you use Metamorphosis, whenever you're in demon form, you gain 20% leech, 10% leech, 20% haste, and you also increase Chaos Strike and Death Sweep. Death Sweep does 37,000 Chaos, Annihilation does like 20,000 Chaos damage. And basically, that's like roughly like 6,000, 7,000 DPS over their other alternatives. So we can see that meta is going to end here, and that's empowered, so we'll click that off. And it does 30,000, and this one does 15,000. So there's a bit of an increase there. Obviously, my stats are more like towards haste right now. I have less mastery, but whatever. So basically, being in that form gives you a pretty sizable increase. What that does is it incentivizes you to be in that form as long as possible. The Metamorphosis cooldown itself is not very powerful. All it really does is give us a lot of demonic form, and then also reset Blade Dance and I-Beam, which is a reason it's strong. Gives us another I-Beam cast, which is more Inner Demon. Gives us another Death Sweep cast, which is double Death Sweep in our Essence Break window, or Restless Hunter. Depends how much hate you have, but it's pretty strong there because of that. But as a cooldown, it's not very strong. And because demonic form itself is so strong, it means meta can't be good. So meta not being good is pretty unfortunate. It means our main CD isn't very impactful. Yeah, it can be strong, especially in AoE, but it's more strong because of how many like I-Beam resets you get, and less because of the actual cooldown itself. So I think that's one big issue. The other big issue with demon form is, like I mentioned earlier, how much it incentivizes you to stay in it. Demon form being so powerful, especially coupled with the talents Cycle of Hatred and Shattered Destiny, means that at any point, especially in single target, if you are not extending or reducing the cooldown of your I-Beam, you are not playing correctly. And this harkens back to something that a lot of people in the community really hate. Sinful Brand. I know, scary, spooky Sinful Brand. Sinful Brand was the Venthyr ability back in Sepultura, the first ones. It was in all of Shadowlands. We didn't use it till the end of the Shadowlands because of a legendary that basically caused our I-Beam and Fell Devastation damage to extend the duration of Brand. What that did was cause a pretty toxic playstyle to emerge, especially in single target. Less so in AoE because it didn't matter as much, but especially in single target, where if you weren't pushing Chaos Strike or a way to generate Fury, you weren't doing anywhere near enough damage, right? You had to push Chaos Strike so many times to reduce the cooldown of I-Beam, to extend your brand. If your brand dropped off, your damage cratered. Back then, Cycle of Hatred was also random. It basically Chaos Strike, whenever you refunded Fury, gave you reduction. It's a lot better now. It incorporates Blade Dance, incorporates Chaos Strike, and it's not random. It's like set in stone how much it is. Each cast is 1 second with 2 points. That's better. But we have hit a similar situation now where if you're not using Blade Dance, if you're not using Chaos Strike to reduce the cooldown of I-Beam or to extend your current demonic form, you're playing wrong. Because if you drop out of demon form, out of demonic form, your damage absolutely craters. You feel very, very weak compared to when you're in your demonic form. So basically what's happened is these two talents together, as well as just how strong demon form is in general, has basically caused us to have Sinful Brand at home, where we're just doing the same thing we were doing before. Sinful Brand, sorry, not Sinful Brand, Demonic has turned into a maintenance buff where we need to keep it up at all times or our damage drops. And that's very unfortunate. It's not very fun gameplay, personally. Now, it's very fast-paced, but it being a maintenance buff, it feels really bad, especially if there's like forced downtime on a fight. There was Sims a while ago. I don't have them anymore, and they expired. But basically, like one missed GCD a minute is like 1,000, 2,000 DPS loss, and it just goes up from there. So Demonic being such a high maintenance buff means we're very susceptible to downtime in a fight. Most melee are, but us are probably one of the worst at it. If we have to get forced off the boss for any long period of time, our damage absolutely falls to the crater, falls to the absolute cave. We don't do any damage. So that's definitely an issue with the spec. Demonic being so powerful and just like being a maintenance buff, that's definitely something that is problematic in general, and is definitely a little bit tired and old. We basically just come back around to Sinful Brand, but Sinful Brand is disguised as demon form. So there's definitely a problem there that should hopefully be looked at. Next up, we're going to talk about momentum. Now, momentum, I don't think itself is too problematic. Pretty much it's this entire left side of the tree being moving for damage. I think it's fine that it exists. But the big issue with momentum is that it requires so much of you to do, right? I think the bigger issue with the movement stuff is Isolated Prey, but momentum itself and all these talents here force a playstyle that has so much like just onus on the player. I posted a short the other day of me just flipping into a swirly, and that's the kind of thing that when you're playing momentum, to be a good Havoc Demon Hunter, you absolutely need to have eyes on every single angle around you. You need to have hyper like acute spatial awareness at every single moment you're playing this game in order to do the most damage you can. Now, there are issues with people who have motion sickness or people who have wrist problems or things like that because of the flipping and turning, right? Like general momentum gameplay is like you flip around, you fel rush through, you backflip, you turn, you do all this stuff. And it can, if you have, you know, issues with your wrist, issues with motion sickness, basically lead to you not being able to play Havoc Demon Hunter. There are not really any no mover builds. There are quote unquote no mover, but it's really like less mover. With this high uptime, often movement gameplay, it's not very fun for a lot of people. It's forced a lot of people off of the spec. And for those of us left here still playing and are very tired of it, right? It's tiring to do that for 6 hours a week, 9 hours a week, raiding in the raid. Being able to keep up eyes everywhere, being like, hey, I need to fel rush at these times, I need to fel rush safely, where can I fel rush to, while also still doing all the mechanics. So it's definitely very fatiguing. You go over, you play a different spec, like Fury Warrior or any other spec in the game, really. They don't really have this kind of thing. And it ends up being pretty problematic for how much you have to put into the spec to get the most out of it, and how much like thought you have going into it. It's tiring, it's old, and definitely needs to be looked at. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about is probably the biggest issue in general. The other things are problematic, but this one is actually a big issue. And that's Isolated Prey, especially with Part of the Flame, but just Isolated Prey alone. So one of the reasons right now that momentum and everything is so hated is because of how often we have to fel rush, right? We're fel rushing so often, momentum is much better on a like low uptime, high power buff. But we fel rush all the time, and the main reason for that is because of Isolated Prey and it having fel rush generate Fury. This also is problematic because we path down here in the no mover build, not counting initiative. This is no mover initiative, which is similar, whatever. I was playing this on Sarkareth, but basically no mover paths down here in order to get to Essence Break and Know Your Enemy, two of our strongest talents. So basically what this does is forces every single build to use fel rush. There's no builds out there that don't use fel rush because fel rush is the best Fury generation ability we have. The reason for that is because fel rush has a shorter GCD. So if I use fel rush, see my abilities are locked out for a lot less time. Look down here, very short, almost instantly, right? You can use things almost as soon as the animation goes through. Now if I use a regular ability, lot slower, significantly slower. But I use fel rush and it's like a 0.2, it's a very short GCD. So using this effectively off GCD or very short GCD button as Fury generation is the reason why we fel rush so much. It's the reason that most of the issues with Havoc in terms of movement exist. Now these talents here do exist and are problematic, but Isolated Prey causing so much movement is definitely one of the biggest issues. Especially because it means that we actually don't have any quote-unquote no mover build, because every build has to use fel rush for Fury because it's our best Fury generation. Also, why is it random? Why is it between 25 and 35? Have it be like 30. I just put the average in. Like, that's weird. That's very weird. Furthermore, Isolated Prey is also problematic because of how it works with something else in our tree. So you think, you know, okay, you gain extra bonuses when striking one target. Well, that's great. In a single target boss fight, this will be on all the time. Well, not exactly. We actually have a talent that summons another target randomly, so you never know what's going to happen. Did you start your I-Beam cast? Oh, well, it looks like the demon summit spawned during it, and your I-Beam is going to do less damage. Did you fel rush for Fury? Well, it turns out you also hit the demon that's summoned at the end of your fel rush, so you don't actually get Fury from it. This happens a lot and it's very problematic, especially because right now, if you're not playing Serrated Glaive, obviously this build is currently, but if you're not playing Serrated Glaive on like a cleave fight or something, if we go to the build I'm playing for, I don't know, like Sark or something with this one, you're not playing Serrated Glaive, so you're not glaving down your demon, which means that the homie just lives till it dies to passive cleave, which turns off your fel rush, turns off all that other stuff, which sucks and is problematic. So really, I think this node needs a big change. This is probably one of the worst nodes in our tree. There's a lot of other problematic nodes though, but that's kind of the gist of the biggest issues, right? We have a lot of nodes that aren't used, and the demonic momentum and Isolated Prey stuff is just bad for Havoc as a whole. In my opinion anyways, it's causing a lot of people to leave and go off of this character spec. It's causing Havoc to just dip down, which is not good. Obviously, I love this spec. I've played it for a while now. I have a channel about it with a fair number of subscribers, so I do obviously care about it and want it to do well. So it sucks that it's not fun, it's not good. People are rolling off of it. People are only playing it because they need the magic debuff, which is not the reason why people should be playing the spec. They should be playing the spec because it's fun and they want to play the spec, not because it gives your raid 5% extra magic damage. So it's unfortunate the situation we're in, you know, but hopefully we see some changes coming. I'll have a video next week going over what changes I personally want to see, what talents I want to see brought into the tree from past expansions, what things that could be pretty interesting or cool. But for now, that's kind of going to be it, my coverage of what the issues with it right now are. Now, that's not even talking about how squishy we are. We are squishy against physical damage and large hits. All we have is blur. But, you know, that's just kind of more of a design perspective. I do think we definitely need some survivability changes too, but whatever. So that's going to be the video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. Drop a comment down below what your least favorite thing is currently, what you want to see changed. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you really want to support me, go down in the description, click the link, become a channel member. That would be pretty great if you ask me. So once again, thank you everybody. Hopefully we see some changes soon, and good luck with your raids and everything. Peace. A big shout out to my channel members: 121, Payne, Joshua O'Connell, Brad Wisniak, Zuligan, James, Exclamation, It's Bulk, Flapjack67, Spaghetti, and Angelo. Again, a big shout out to all of you guys. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to become a channel member, get access to some exclusive videos, exclusive emotes, a special part of the Discord, as well as access to things like VOD and log review, then follow the link down below. It's a great way to support me, help put out better videos, and make better content. So again, thank you everybody. Thank you for watching the video. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.